divine. Take your true form. Embrace the ice.
As one with wind and cloud.
Hey guys, 2D Man here, and today we're going to be talking about Shenhe. Now that she's been released and been out for a good bit, and she also only has a week left in her banner, I'm going to give you my thoughts on whether I think it was worth pulling for her or not. Now, Shenhe was a character who was assumed to be rather weak before she was even released. A lot of people were disappointed with her kit, considering that they also wanted her to maybe get a buff in the beta or some fixes, just because when we knew about her numbers, she, from paper's standpoint, seemed kind of on the weekend. And this isn't surprising considering there's been a lot of characters that have been released lately that people have considered to not be the greatest as far as kit-wise. Now, this character did get slightly modified from how they were in beta. In fact, this character did receive some major nerfs in the fact that they removed some certain elements from her, but I won't go any further into that. It also didn't help that Zhongli and Ganyu, her cryo counterpart, were also getting their reruns, which definitely made skipping Shenhe very tempting and kind of overshadowed her release. Now, upon retaining her and playing her for about a week, I was a little superstitious about her kit, as she felt a little awkward in certain rotations, specifically when I tried to use an auto attack hyper build for like a ayaka. Unfortunately, when you used her hold down E ability, which should provide more quills, it's just her cooldown was just a little too long. The main problem with this, I guess, issue with rotation was the inherent cooldown for her holding ability, taking up to 15 seconds, making the rotations seem rather awkward in times. And the reason why you really wanted to do a holding was due to the passive and this tempting 15% increase in your normal and charge attack damage, as well as plunge. But later on, after about a week, I discovered that in reality, holding it down just wasn't worth it. And I found a fix to this particular issue, where instead of doing the hold down ability, instead you just do the press. Even though you don't get that 15% increase in your normals, it still is extremely beneficial. Now, even with my Ayaka, who did not have super strong blizzard pieces, and I ended up switching to a different kind of build, in this particular clip I'm using a 4-piece gladiator, which is plenty strong enough. Even though I don't get the benefits from the normal attack, I still get those ice quills, which makes the rotation so much easier, and it helps my burst anyways. This quick little fix I found just to be extremely helpful and to make the rotations a lot quicker, considering that most of all the abilities in this rotation take around 10 seconds, with the exception of Kazuha. And with this, I'll also go into the major strengths that I think Shenhe brings to cryo teams, and that's the fact that you don't really need to run a Hydro character. For the longest time, I always struggled to try to figure out where Shenhe really fitted in those cryo teams, considering I couldn't really replace Mona. And here lies where I believe Shenhe really does thrive, is the fact that she can bring utility to an Ayaka or Chunyun team that doesn't fully rely on a Hydro unit for freeze. I do believe Shenhe enables Ayaka to be run in different teams where she doesn't have to run 4-piece Blizzard. Now, I do believe that this is kind of a neglected and overlooked portion, because most of the community will have their cryo DPS built with Blizzard, specifically Ayaka, maybe Chunyun, and maybe Ganyu. I know Reverse Melt Ganyu is also popular, but not too many Ayakas utilize anything aside from the 4-piece Blizzard, which I'm not saying it's not extremely good, but she does have other builds that work. I think Shenhe does open up that opportunity for Ayaka to be played in a slightly different style, whereas before she was restricted to play in a pretty specific manner using a Hydro unit, preferably Mona, Barbara, or Kokomi, with Kazuha or some kind of Anemo unit, and then whatever kind of cryo support you wanted. You could do the same thing with Shenhe, but in this type of team, I still wanted to keep Kazuha, but I had problems, and I tried testing out stuff where either I use Barbara, Sing Chu or any other kind of character, even Mona. But in this particular team, Ayaka still is able to run, assuming you're running a different build or you have enough crit rate. This particular team isn't geared towards the Blizzard set. In fact, it's meant to be played with a different set for Ayaka. You can do reverse melt, but it isn't as strong as... That's not the critical part that I'm trying to get at. I think Shenhe really works super well for melt teams specifically, but when it comes to freeze teams, she's kind of mediocre and doesn't really bring anything. She does bring utility, but it's not like substantially good. In fact, Kazuha for the most part works better, and then you could just have Mona instead. If I were to go and show you my initial old team that I used to run, it was always Mona, Diona, Kazuha, and Ayaka. This team worked and performed perfectly fine and provided all the utility I really needed. In fact, if I was going to go Blizzard, I really don't know where Shenhe would fit in this particular team, as this team works fine, if not better, when it comes to the burst. But I do think that this team kind of lacks a little bit in Ayaka's normals. The burst is extremely good. But it was just, when you thought about this team, it was like, man, was Shenhe really worth it? When in reality, this team was working fine. But I will show you a clip where you'll see something slightly different, where it kind of changes how you play Ayaka when you have Shenhe there. Where it just shows that instead of just relying on your burst and heavy hits of just high amounts of burst damage from Ayaka, you can also get a substantial amount of damage from her normal attacks. In between. So if we go back and we look at this team, you've got Bennett, Kazuha, and it's slightly different. So you're replacing the healer, and you've got Melt and a lot of else going on. You completely switch out Mona and Diona out of the team. Ayaka doesn't really need a battery. I'm not running 4-piece Blizzard, as I mentioned earlier. It's totally different. I just want to get the point across that Shenhe just encourages a different playstyle and a new way of playing some of these characters in a way that they weren't specifically played before. You can still play them in the old way, but I just think this opens up a whole gate of new gameplay that we can use. Now, my Ayaka is C0, so what you were seeing in that clip is definitely free to play, achievable. The only thing whaley about it is the weapon in particular. I do know that the artifacts will be something that you have to obtain over time, but after much time, I do know many people that have stronger builds than I do, and I also know people that are able to achieve more damage than I am, even with the Harbinger of Dawn that's at R5, and that's definitely free to play attainable. But yeah, my main point is that this isn't C6 Ayaka that you're seeing here. This is a C0. When you go online, most of the time you just see C6 Ayakas doing big damage with Shenhe. It's kind of deceptive in how it approaches and showing where Shenhe really shines. And I think the quicker you can make your rotations and take advantage of the ice quills from her E ability, the better. And it works really well if you're doing rotations with Ayaka really quickly. Kazuha also encourages quick rotations due to the nature of one of his passives that provides elemental damage bonus for 8 seconds. So it's just, you gotta figure out the teams, but I really think Shenhe will get stronger as further characters are released. Somebody did mention, I've seen this before, and it seems to be a pattern where Genshin releases characters with solutions with problems that don't exist yet until later on in the game. They release a problem, and they've already released a character, you know, in the past that will solve that problem. For instance, Raiden Shogun deals with energy recharge problems. There aren't too many characters in the game that actually need a super good battery to the extent that she can provide, but I do believe down the road we will get more characters that need more energy, maybe having burst that cost up to 90 energy or more, especially considering that her C6 that some whales might have provides cooldown reduction and more battery, but like, you don't even need it. But I think that down the road there will definitely be more characters, I don't want to say names, that could probably definitely utilize this. There was also characters like Kazuha who ended up, you know, proving us wrongs in all sorts of ways and providing utility, especially specifically mono compositions. And I really think that's where Shenhe works, in a mono cryo or a melt team, where she shines really well in providing a utility in that regard. Whereas when it comes to freeze teams, your go-to is going to be Mona, because Mona in a freeze comp provides really good utility. Not only, and the same thing could be said about Kokomi, just Mona doesn't provide healing, but she does provide more damage just to the nature of her omen, which its duration can get extended by the freeze. So it's interesting. I would say if you're planning on running freeze teams, Shenhe really doesn't provide anything unique. In fact, she can be kind of like a downgrade in some regards. But if you're trying to do anything within like a melt team with some freeze, or if you're trying to do mono cryo, then what she provides is definitely unique. Definitely not something you need. More of a luxury item, if anything, to be honest. Am I disappointed with getting her and her ability and her kit? To be honest, I'm actually very happy, because for a while there, I really thought that C1 was really a kind of must if you were going to hold down the E ability. But knowing that if I rotate quickly enough and I fix my rotations, I can utilize her perfectly fine at C0, that's all I really need. But I will say, in the future, you might regret maybe not getting her, depending on if you're like an Ayaka or Ganyu main. But with Ganyu being right around the door as far as character banners, I would definitely focus more on getting the cryo DPS unit first, and then maybe getting the supports after. Anyways, that's it for the video, guys, and until then, we'll catch you next time. Peace out.